What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I'm really excited to finally share some XDefiant gameplay as well as my early initial impressions and review from the beta build of the game. And I do want you to keep that in mind. I haven't had a ridiculous amount of playtime. I don't know all the details of all the different abilities and the weapon balancing and stuff like that. I can't really judge a lot of those details simply because it takes a whole lot more gameplay time to figure out stuff like that. So this is more so just going to be a big picture look and a general overview of how I'm feeling about XDefiant so far in this beta. And I'll tell you guys right up front, I'm having an absolute blast with this. For those of you guys who were watching my stream, you guys could very clearly see that, I'm sure. So let's start this off with the positive stuff, the stuff that I'm really liking about XDefiant based on my limited experience so far. And the main thing that I'm loving about XDefiant right now is the general gameplay pacing and flow and just the general feel of the game is very reminiscent of the golden age of Call of Duty to me. Now, I classify the golden age of COD to be somewhere around like COD 4 to Black Ops 2, somewhere in that range. And I would say this game feels more like those games than current Call of Duty does. And this is due to a wide variety of reasons. One big thing is map design. I feel like the map design is very reminiscent of older Call of Duty games. There's great variety here, and generally great pacing and flow on these maps based on my experiences so far. And a lot of that great flow comes down to the spawn logic. This is the second point. This has very traditional Call of Duty spawn logic to it that I find to be extremely intuitive and easy to predict. And that makes for much more predictable flow on a match. I don't feel like people are just constantly popping up randomly all over the map. Instead, it's actually got some solid logic to it. So when I kill somebody, I have a pretty good idea just intuitively that they're going to be spawning at least somewhere in this general area of the map. And I think that's great for helping you read and manage that big picture in a game. With the spawn logic, there's also a very clear distinction between my team's side of the map and the enemy team's side of the map, and the maps tend to flow the way that they were designed to flow, whereas in something like Modern Warfare 2 with their squad spawn style system, I often find the spawns have you fighting like perpendicular or diagonally to the intended flow of the map design, and that just plays really awkward. Not so much in XDefiant. It plays the way that older Call of Duties used to play. On top of this, the gunplay is feeling quite satisfying. The aim assist isn't nearly as strong as newer Call of Duty games, and I personally like that because that makes for a much higher aiming skill gap, and I just find the kills are a lot more rewarding because I feel like I have to put in that extra effort to ensure that I'm landing those shots consistently and not relying on aim assist as much as Call of Duty. Now, to top that off with that classic Call of Duty feel, we have a traditional Call of Duty style minimap where if you fire an unsuppressed gun, you'll show up as a red dot on that minimap, which makes it really easy to read and predict flow throughout a match as well. However, we do have options in this game to reduce how long that dot will appear for enemy players, or you can even eliminate it entirely with the right suppressor attachment, and these suppressors have balanced trade-offs to them, so you're really giving up something meaningful in order to gain that power, which is balanced. On top of that, just a few minor points as well that I really like. It's got a super simple and intuitive UI. I don't feel like I have to practice their user interface in order to figure out how to do some basic things with it. Instead, I've noticed that I can just find what I'm looking for intuitively without having to learn anything, and that's excellent to see. And another thing from traditional Call of Duty that I've missed over the past several months is a reload cancel. You can cancel a reload in the middle of a gunfight. I know some people don't like that, but as a Call of Duty player, I do like that. Now, as for the next big thing that I'm really liking about XDefiant, this is going to be slightly controversial, I know. This game has little to no skill-based matchmaking in the regular casual playlists, although they will have a ranked playlist as well for those that are looking for that. And I personally love this, and I noticed it immediately. It actually feels good to be good at this game. And you see that reflected in your performance in the game. If you're an above average player, you're going to be consistently performing above average. It doesn't feel like the matchmaking system is manipulating your experience to let you have some good games, and then if you're performing too well, then they have to dial it back a notch for you to make sure you have some bad games so someone else can have some good games. And then when you play bad for too long, they throw you a few pity games to make you feel better about yourself. It doesn't feel like that. This feels organic. It feels like as you get better at the game, your performance will consistently improve. And that is a huge element that I miss from older Call of Duty games that had skill-based matchmaking, but not nearly to the level that we've currently got, where it's more of an engagement optimized system that can change wildly from game to game. Now, I do hope they do a good job with the newcomer playlist in the future for those brand new players or maybe players with disabilities that can't perform super well, for instance. I do think it's important to bring new players in and get them hooked and excited to play the game, but I also don't feel like that should come at the cost of completely throwing out the idea of getting good and seeing improvement in your performance because you're getting good at the game. That's something that I've really missed over the years with Call of Duty. Next up on my list of things that I'm really liking about XDefiant, it's kind of refreshing, I find, to have really simple weapon builds. As much as I like certain elements of the gunsmith system in Call of Duty, I do feel like it has become a little too complex, especially when they don't give us actual stats, which XDefiant does give us the actual stats and what changes when you put attachments on. And I really like the simplicity of that in the game. I feel like I'm spending a lot less time focusing on creating the perfect builds, and that allows me to just focus my attention on the gameplay itself and improving my gameplay, and the loadout and the attachments and stuff are just tools to help me achieve that goal, rather than one of the main focuses of the game. As to the next thing I like about this game, we've already got a solid amount of content. There are 14 maps in the beta of this game, which is incredible to see. I will say at this point, there's not a huge variety of weapons. There's not a massive weapon selection. I don't know if that's just a beta thing or if we're expecting to launch with this number of guns. But to me, map content is more important anyway, and we've got a lot of map content. And on top of that, apparently there's a huge roadmap of content planned for consistent seasonal updates over time, which is excellent to hear. And this just brings me to the final general point I wanted to talk about in this video that I really like about XDefiant, and that is the fact that this game has complete focus on doing one thing really well. And that is the 6v6 arcade arena style shooter. That's all they're doing with this game, and therefore that allows them to focus all of their energy toward that experience. And this is yet another area where I feel like Call of Duty has fallen apart in recent years. They've tried to do a little bit of everything and dip their toe into every genre of FPS game while trying to mash all of that into a single game. And with this, I've found that they've lost a lot of the focus and attention to detail on individual aspects of the game. Whereas with XDefiant, they have laser focus on one thing and just doing that one thing the best that they possibly can. And with that wraps it up for the highlights, at least, of what I'm really liking about XDefiant so far. Of course, there's a bunch of tiny nitpicky things I could throw in there as well, but I did want this video to be a bit more general. Perhaps after the beta is over, I'll do a much more detailed feedback video, but this one's designed to be a bit more general. Now let's talk about some of the things that I'm not liking so much, or at the very least, I'm a bit unsure about at this point. And the first thing that I'm not unsure about at all, the connection experience sucks right now. Just straight up, this is the biggest issue I've had with the game throughout the beta so far. I've been shot so far around corners on a very consistent basis. I've had lots of shots just not registering properly. Thankfully, they have confirmed that the game is currently running on outdated netcode, and apparently this is going to be improving substantially over time. So I'm not judging it too harshly based on this at the moment. I know it's going to improve, and I'll be sure to give my updated thoughts on this once we do gain access to the updated netcode that the game will be running on in the future. As for the next thing on my list here that I'm not loving with XDefiant, this is the controller feel. While I will say this has been massively improved from the previous tech test, at least on PlayStation 5, and I wouldn't say it's absolutely horrible in its current state, it's definitely very playable and it works just fine. I haven't had too many big issues with this. I do still think that perhaps they could use some work in this area. I don't know what it is specifically that feels off, but I don't think this has anything to do with aim assist either. I honestly feel like if I were to turn off my aim assist in this game and in Call of Duty, I'd still be aiming a whole lot better in Call of Duty than XDefiant. So I don't think this is an aim assist issue. I think it may just have to do with the default acceleration curves or perhaps input lag. I haven't done any measurements with input lag. I don't know if that's the case. All I know is this could be feeling a little bit better based on my experience with Call of Duty over the years. Perhaps it's even as simple as just having different default settings when it comes to the controller feel. I do feel like the default settings were not great, and I managed to improve it quite a bit. Here are the current settings that I'm using, keeping in mind I think I still have some room for optimization here. But if you guys are struggling, maybe try these settings out, see if that improves it for you, see if you can get a better feel out of that. But in general, I do feel like this area could use a bit more work. And going off of that point, with the current state of the controller settings and the weaker aim assist, which again, I am on board with, another thing I'm not really liking about this is the discrepancy between controller and mouse and keyboard. In this game, even as a lifetime controller player, I feel mouse and keyboard has a very noticeable advantage over controller players. And as a result, I've been playing this beta so far with crossplay disabled, so I'm only playing against other PlayStation players. And in that case, it feels great. I really like this game when it's controller versus controller, but the moment you mix a mouse and keyboard player in there, it doesn't really feel like a fair experience. As for the next item on my list of things that I'm not a big fan of in XDefiant, and I do feel like this is going to be one of the biggest sticking points for a lot of Call of Duty players, this is the character abilities. With these abilities that are either time-based or time plus total score-based for your ultimate, this creates situations with inconsistent HP values where if you're using the healer, which most people are using right now, they're going to have more health in certain situations. They're also going to be able to heal faster. And then outside of that, there's also shields in play and invisibility and stuff like that. And this is a complete preference-based thing. Some people love those abilities. And at the end of the day, XDefiant has decided to go that route, so we're going to have to get used to it. Although I do feel like they're probably going to have to rebalance quite a bit of those, especially the healing characters. But with this, like I said, I think this is going to be one of the biggest sticking points for a lot of Call of Duty players that would otherwise jump ship immediately and come over and play XDefiant. For many people, the fact that these exist just turns them away. So down the road, I would love to see them try a no abilities mode, where everybody's on an equal playing field when it comes to that, and then it just becomes about the gun-on-gun action and gunplay. Which is honestly probably part of the reason we're seeing so many healers as well. I know part of it is due to the fact that they are overpowered at this point, but I also think many Call of Duty players just want to keep it simple. They just want to focus on the gunfights themselves, and with the healers, this allows them to do that more than anything else. They don't have to worry about finding a good place to pop a shield or pulling out a flamethrower or anything like that. They literally just pop that health item to give them a bit more of an advantage in their gun-on-gun gunfights. So I think a no abilities mode like this would actually be really successful in bringing a lot of Call of Duty players over, and it would reduce that sticking point a little bit. And going off of that, if they do decide to do a mode like that, perhaps they could also bring something else back that I just found myself wanting as I was playing this game because it had so much of a classic Call of Duty feel. This is the idea of streaks, where if you go on a streak in the same life, you can earn rewards. And I realize XDefiant doesn't have to do literally everything that classic Call of Duty did. But if they were to do a no abilities mode, perhaps they could try turning those abilities into score streaks instead, where you can still earn the abilities, but that's the thing, you have to actually earn them by going on a streak. That is just my opinion of that. Maybe just for like a side mode, I think it would be fun to try something out like that. But that actually wraps it up for the primary things that I'm not liking or at least a little bit unsure about in XDefiant. Again, just like I said with the things I like, I'm sure there are a bunch of other little nitpicky things I could bring up, and maybe I will do that in a video after the beta. But these are at least the main general items that I wanted to share and my initial impressions of XDefiant based on the beta so far. Now, of course, these are all just my opinions. I'm personally really looking forward to this even more now after playing in the beta. It really brings back a lot of nostalgic feelings from older Call of Duty, and it really makes me appreciate a lot of the things that Call of Duty has lost over the past 4 or so years. Now, having said that, I wouldn't say this is going to be like the Call of Duty killer or anything, but it's absolutely competition for Call of Duty, and it's also a great alternative for Call of Duty, and competition is great for consumers, so hopefully this game will really take off. Of course, these are just my thoughts and opinions on XDefiant though, and I'd love to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First off, have you had the opportunity to try out the beta so far? And second, what are you thinking about this game? Whether that's through playing the game yourself or just seeing videos like this and watching some gameplay, what are your initial impressions of XDefiant? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.